Hello there.
Hey, what's up, you guys? This is April with the For Richer Horror Podcast, and today, surprisingly, we're not doing a creepypasta. So, I finished my series on I Dare My Best Friend to Ruin My Life. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Now we're gonna kind of get back into the creepy and morbid stuff, I would say. So this week is going to be talking about skinwalkers. So in Navajo culture, a skinwalker is a type of harmful witch who has the ability to turn into, possess, or disguise themselves as an animal. As the Navajo English Dictionary explains, the skinwalker has been translated from the Navajo Yi-nal-de-hu-ji. I know I pronounced that wrong, but that literally means by means of it, it goes on all fours. And the Yi-nal-de-hu-ji is merely one of many varieties of skinwalkers called Anti-Genie. So the Pueblo people, Apache and Hopi, also have their own legends involving the skinwalker, but we're going to be talking about Navajo and the Yi-nal-de-hu-ji. So some traditions believe that skinwalkers are born of a benevolent medicine man who abuses indigenous magic for evil. The medicine man is then given mythical powers of evil that vary from tradition to tradition, but the power all traditions mention is the ability to turn into or possess an animal or a person. Other traditions believe that a man, woman, or child can become a skinwalker should they commit any kind of deep-seated taboo. Skinwalker is a term that is never used for healers, despite it possibly starting with healers. It is just one of several types of Navajo witches and is considered the most volatile and dangerous. In order to become a skinwalker, he or she must be initiated by a secret society that requires the evilest of deeds, the killing of a close family member, most oftenly siblings. Sean, watch out. I'm kidding. After this task has been completed, the individual then acquires supernatural powers, which gives them the ability to shapeshift into animals. Most often, they are seen in the form of coyotes, wolves, foxes, cougars, dogs, and bears, but they can really take the shape of any animal. They then wear the skins of the animal that they transform into, hence the name Skinwalker. Sometimes they also wore animal skulls or antlers atop their heads, which brought them even more power. They chose what animal they wanted to turn into depending on the abilities needed for a particular task, such as speed, strength, endurance, stealth, claws, teeth. Because of this, the Navajo consider it taboo for its members to wear the pelt of any predatory animal. However, sheepskin, leather, and buckskin are acceptable. So this evil society of witches, let's get into them. They gather in dark caves or secluded places for several purposes: to initiate new members, plot their activities, harm people from a distance with black magic, and perform dark ceremonial rites. These ceremonies are similar to other tribal affairs, including dancing, feasts, rituals, and sand painting, but were a little more corrupted with dark connotations. The evildoers are also said to engage in necrophilia with female corpses, commit cannibalism, incest, and grave robberies. Isn't that fun? So Navajo witchery is the essence of predatory criminality. There's no law enforcement agency of any kind that intrudes into the matter of traditional Navajo self-defense when this extremely ancient evil threatens one's health or life, which is kind of sad. It's like, they can't help you. There are some rare skinwalkers that have the ability to enchant the powder of corpses and use this substance as a poisonous dust on their victims, so even the air isn't safe. The skinwalkers are described as being mostly animalistic physically, even when they are in human form. But as animals, they appear to be deformed with an animalistic body, marred face, and blazing orange red eyes. The paws look more like deformed-looking hands with overgrown, somewhat thick and sharp fingernails. They are reportedly near impossible to kill, except with a bullet or a knife dipped in white ash. I wasn't able to find the reason why the white ash was symbolic or necessary. But according to the legend, the witch doctors disguise themselves as animals to gain human trust. They travel alongside vehicles in desolate areas, tapping on the windows until the driver eventually stops to investigate the mysterious noise. And they never get back in their car. So even mentioning skinwalkers is taboo within the Navajo culture because they believe just speaking about the entity will draw attention to themselves and make them a target. So let's talk a little bit more about the Navajo. So where can you find skinwalkers? Well, Navajo Nation, of course. Navajo is the largest tribe in the U.S., both geographically and population-wise. They beat out the Cherokee for population back in 2020. The locale is comprised of the northeast corner of Arizona, southeast corner of Utah, and the northwest corner of New Mexico. So they're in 3 out of the 4 corners. But weirdly enough, none of it at all is in Colorado. And then the biggest portion is in my home state of Arizona. So there ought to be a lot of skinwalker stories here. So according to the legend, the skinwalkers in Arizona have the power to possess a human being or animal just by locking eyes with them. They can steal faces of different people, including those whom you may know. So while researching this topic, I did find a place that I thought was related, but surprisingly, Skinwalker Ranch doesn't have as much to do with skinwalkers as one might expect. It started with skinwalkers, but now it's actually primarily focused on aliens in recent years, and I'll kind of get into that a little bit more, but let's stay on the trend with skinwalkers. So very little has been documented about skinwalkers and possible murders attributed to such an entity, though there was a legal case in June of 1987. Behind the Flagstaff Medical Center in Arizona, the body of a Navajo woman was found nude, beaten, and had suffered numerous fatal stab wounds to her upper torso. Her left breast appeared to have been bitten off, and the bruising on her face was so severe that she was barely recognizable. So the woman, later identified as Sarah Sagnito, I hope I pronounced that right. I will not be saying her last name going forward. I will just say Sarah, had been a housekeeper for the hospital, and it was her first time working the night shift the weekend she turned up missing. George Abney, a former English professor at NAU, Northern Arizona University, was arrested and charged with her murder. Abney claimed that he was having bizarre dreams about Sarah's murder, which he told friends about. Under pressure, Abney confessed to having murdered the woman, but by Abney's own admission, he was having difficulty distinguishing between dreams and reality. His defense was a bizarre one, to say the least. Abney, a devout Christian, believed that he was receiving prophecies from God, but his defense lawyer brought up another possibility. Sarah, being part of the Navajo Nation, may have been attacked by a skinwalker. A broken stick across her neck and a clump of grass, believed to have been from a graveyard left near her truck, had been among the defense's evidence that there had been some form of black magic behind the brutal slaying. Even at the height of satanic panic and occult hysteria, nobody bought Abney's unusual defense. Teeth marks on Sarah's left breast appeared to have belonged to Abney, and his unusual dreams that prosecutors said were confessions, honestly, and that was enough to find the disgraced professor guilty as charged. A year later, Abney had been acquitted and cleared of all charges. Sarah's family said that they believed in Abney's innocence, and the case was reopened in 1988. The murder remains unsolved to this day. It really brings to question, did Abney get away with murder? Or was Sarah's death really the result of a skinwalker? This is one of the only legal cases that I found involving skinwalkers where it was used as a defense. Aside from that, another mention of Skinwalker, of course, was Skinwalker Ranch, so we're getting to that now. The rest of America got its first real taste of the Navajo legend in 1996 when the Desert News published an article called Frequent Flyers. The story chronicled a Utah family's traumatizing experience with the supposed creature that included cattle mutilations and disappearances, UFO sightings, and the appearance of crop circles. I don't know why it's called Skinwalker Ranch if in later years it's all just been about aliens, but I digress. So Terry and Gwen Sherman first observed UFOs of varying sizes hovering above their property. Then 7 of their cows died or disappeared. One was reportedly found with a hole cut in the center of its left eyeball. Another had its rectum carved out. The cattle that the Shermans did find dead were both surrounded by an odd chemical smell. One was found dead in a clump of trees. The branches above appeared to have been cut off. One of the cows that vanishes had left tracks in the snow that just suddenly stopped. And Terry Sherman said, if it's snow, it's hard for a 1,200 to 1,400 pound animal to just walk off without leaving tracks or to stop and walk backwards completely and never miss their tracks. It was just gone. It was very bizarre. The family's most disturbing encounter, though, occurred one night just 18 months after moving onto the ranch. Perhaps most terrifying was the voices that Terry Sherman heard while walking his dog late one night. Sherman reported that the voices spoke in a language he didn't recognize. He estimated that they came from about 25 feet away, but he couldn't see a thing. His dogs went berserk, barked, and ran back hastily to the house. There was another recollection of the events that stated Terry Sherman, father of the family, was walking his dogs around the ranch late at night when he encountered a wolf. But this wasn't an ordinary wolf, of course. It was perhaps 3 times bigger than a normal one. It had glowing red eyes and stood unfazed by 3 close-range shots that Sherman blasted into its hide. The Sherman family weren't the only ones to be traumatized on the property. After they moved out, several new owners experienced eerily similar encounters with these creatures. Terry and Gwen Sherman sold the so-called Skinwalker Ranch in 1996 after only having owned it for 12 months. It's been used as a research hub for the paranormal ever since, primarily aliens, but we'll keep on the theme with skinwalkers. So after selling the 512-acre ranch, these incidents only continued, and that's where it mainly turned from skinwalkers to aliens, but I'll try to focus on skinwalkers, as I already said. I mean, aliens is going to be a whole episode in and of itself, if not more. Anyway, UFO enthusiast and Las Vegas realtor Robert Bigelow bought the ranch for $200,000 in 1996. He established the National Institute for Discovery Science on the grounds and put up substantial surveillance. The goal was to assess what exactly had been going on there. On March 12, 1997, Bigelow's employee biochemist, Dr. Colm Keller, spotted a large humanoid figure perched in a tree. Detailed in his book, Hunt for the Skinwalker, the creature was 20 feet off the ground and about 50 feet away. And Keller wrote, "The large creature that lay motionless almost casually in the tree. The only indication of the beast's presence was the penetrating yellow light of the unblinking eyes as they stared fixedly back into the light." Keller fired at the supposed skinwalker with a rifle, but it fled. It left claw marks and imprints on the ground. Keller described the evidence as a sign of a bird of prey, maybe a raptor print, but huge, and from the depth of the print, from a very heavy creature. This was only a few days after another unnerving incident. The ranch manager and his wife had just tagged a calf before their dog began acting strangely. They went back to investigating 45 minutes later, and in the field in broad daylight found the calf and its body cavity empty. Most people know if an 84-pound calf is killed, there is blood spread around. It was as if all of the blood had been removed in a very thorough way. The distressing activity continued well into the summer. 3 witnesses saw a very large animal in a tree and also another large animal at the base of the tree. They had videotape equipment, night vision equipment, and they started hunting around the tree for the carcass, but there was no evidence whatsoever. Ultimately, Bigelow and his research team experienced over 100 incidents on the property, but couldn't amass the kind of evidence that scientific publication would accept for credulity, that word. Bigelow sold the ranch to a company called Adamantium Holdings for $4.5 million in 2016. And now owned by Adamantium Holdings, Skinwalker Ranch is now fortified with barbed wire, private property signs, and armed guards. Nevertheless, the research on Skinwalker Ranch is more sophisticated and secretive than ever. Since taking over Skinwalker Ranch, Adamantium has installed equipment all over the property, including cameras, alarm systems, infrared, and more. Most alarmingly, however, are the accounts from company employees. According to Vice, employee Thomas Winterton was one of several who randomly experienced skin inflammation and nausea after working on the grounds. Some had to be hospitalized with no clear medical diagnosis for their condition. As Winston reported, I take my truck up the road, and as I start to get closer, I start to get really scared. Just this feeling that takes over. Then I hear this voice, as clear as you and me talking right now, that says, "Stop, turn around." I lean out the window with my spotlight out and start searching around. Nothing. There are many stories about skinwalkers online in such forms as Reddit. I'll get to that in a minute. But these experiences commonly occur on Native American reservations and are allegedly only prevented by the blessing of a medicine man. While it is difficult to determine just how truthful these accounts are, the descriptions are almost always the same. 4-legged beasts with a disturbing human, albeit marred face and orange-red glowing eyes. Those who have claimed to see these skinwalkers also said that they were fast and made a hellish noise. So, next, I do have a brief story to tell of a skinwalker account from Reddit. I know, another Reddit post, but this will be much shorter than the others I've done. This is my skinwalker story. And yes, my friends in the story are dicks, as you'll soon realize, but this is 100% real. I grew up near American Fork Canyon. My friends and I had heard stories of skinwalkers and ghosts and possible other creatures up the canyon. We would always go up there in the afternoon as my parents didn't let me out after dark. But after I turned 18 and moved out, we started going on night hikes. We would usually go on hikes on or near the full moon because the moon would be so bright and you didn't really need a flashlight. We had been doing night hikes for a few months with nothing weird ever happening. Not even a large animal sighting until this one particular night. There was one spot we would frequent. It was pretty flat, trees on all sides, but no overhead canopy, so the moon was the only light we needed. It also had a pretty cool spot with logs around a fire pit, pretty far up the trail. It always seemed to be out of place, but it was a great spot to stop and smoke or even start a fire. We were almost to the spot, and my 2 guy friends were in front when we heard this sound, a loud, blood-curdling scream. It sounded like an elk, but it was so close to us, we had never seen elk near that area before, let alone any signs of predators. We decided to keep going, at least to our smoking spot, when we all heard a twig snap right in front of us. My 2 friends both swore and start running in the opposite direction. Since I was shorter and in the back, I didn't see what would scare them. I thought that maybe they were pranking me or something. I looked back at them for a second, then faced forward on the path. Right in front was a log for the smoking spot, but there in the moonlight, I saw the shape of a large wolf with bright red eyes. I froze up until this wolf thing transformed into a large human, still with red eyes and an animal hood on its back. I have never ran so hard in my life. My friends were already in the car, and as soon as I was in the car, we sped away. We never did any night hikes up American Fork or Provo Canyon again. I told my friends what I saw, and they said they only saw the wolf. Wolves are not common in Utah, and to the best of my knowledge, there aren't any in that canyon. But I know it was a wolf, and then a large man. Years later, I can still see that scene in my head, like it happened yesterday. Alrighty, so that was our little story of someone's account of encountering a skinwalker. Do you guys believe it? Do you not? I don't know. I mean, I find it very interesting, and for some reason, I feel like Native American folklore like this, I am more inclined to believe just because they do have that history there. For all I know, it could be just bullshit, but I feel like, you know, there is some integrity to it. There is some honesty there. So I'm curious to hear if you guys believe the same thing or if you think it's just a load of shit. But anyway, that is our Skinwalker episode. I hope you guys join me next week, where I'm going to be talking about the most common places to be murdered. All right, I'll see you next week. Bye.